Okay, so today, this is slightly different episode structure. We're going to call this series Fundamentals. So the fundamentals today will be with keyboards. So I've got with me Chris Penfold. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Vic. Nice to see you early in the morning.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Obviously, people listening to this don't realise how early we had to get up to do this. But anyway, so Chris is in his studio in France. So, and if you're watching this, you can see there's some keyboards set up in the background. And if you're not watching it, you'll be able to hear them in a minute. So the question is, Chris, keyboards or piano, what we need is what you would say is sort of fundamentals for people when they're starting off, and just that sort of thing where maybe people going from one level to another, you know, what sort of things they can do that would help with that.
Okay.
All right.
So the first thing is you've got to bear in mind that you're playing as part of a group. You are not being put into the spotlight. You're not expected to be Jules Holland playing boogie woogie on your own in front of lots and lots of people. So you're going to be playing as part of a band. So the pressure is off, really, from the word go.
Right.
In fact, you don't even have to use two hands. If you just concentrate on being able to play 3 or 4 chords with the right hand, then those 3 or 4 chords can be used with a variety of different sounds to provide some backing for whatever types of music or tunes, pieces are going to be either chosen for you or written or chosen by someone else. So the typical example, so if we're in the key of C, I'm just going to play a C chord with the right hand, nice and easy, and then I might play a G chord, and then an A minor chord, and then an F chord. That's 4 chords for a typical 4-chord song, but you can change them around, playing them in a different order, or you can just choose C, F, and G to play rock and roll songs.
Okay, let's just stop you there because I was watching you do that. Of course, those chords in the key of C, they're all white notes, yeah?
Yeah.
They're all white notes on the keyboard. So for people that are actually starting off from the beginning, could you explain a little bit about what the chord looks like? Because you're just playing like a little 3-note chord there, aren't you? And it's...
The key of C uses, like Vic said, uses all the white notes. So when we talk about a chord, the chord of C, the note C is at the bottom. It's what we call the root note. So our first note is C. Then we literally miss a note and play the note after that. Miss a note and play the note after that. So actually we're playing, if C is note 1, we're adding note 3 and note 5 and then just playing them together at the same time.
So it's alternate notes, basically.
Yeah, exactly, alternate notes. And then it's exactly the same with all the others. So if I move up to the chord of F, I keep the shape that I've got on my hand exactly the same, and I literally move to the right 4 notes. My thumb is now on F, the bottom note. I miss a note, my third finger is going to play A, which is the next note, and then I miss a note, and my little finger is going to play the C above. I play it all together. And the joy of that is that you don't necessarily, hopefully you're seeing, you don't have to stare at the keyboard with a set of binoculars trying to work out where the notes are. Your position of your hand stays the same all the time. Okay.
So in other words, I could play that.
Your fingers. So that again?
Yeah. I was going to say, in other words, I'd be able to play that.
Yeah, you'd be able to do it. Anyone can do it. Yeah.
Right. That's good then.
So, a lot of people, people will now say, well, that's in a key of C, that's all the white notes. What about if you're playing in other keys? Well, it's not that much different. In fact, it's not that much different at all. So, Vic, choose a key for me.
All right, well, let's go to the key of G.
Key of G, okay. So, we start again. My thumb is on G, it's the same position. I miss a note. I've got B, I miss a note, and I've got D. If I move my hand to the right 4 notes again, I'm on the chord of C, which, funny enough, I just learned previously.
Yeah.
And I can play that again. If I move to the next chord, I've got D, F, and A. But if you're playing in a group with a group of people, there will be a bright spark who tells you, well, actually, the key of G has 1 sharp in it, and that is F sharp. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to play the D, the first note as before. The middle note, which would be an F, I'm just going to move my middle finger up to the black note just above the F. And my little finger comes onto the A. And I'm not really looking at what I'm doing, but and that's the D chord. And I can come back and I'm back to the G. So in fact, the only change in notes for 6 of those key signatures will be the middle note, because it is the middle note that you are raising or lowering to sharpen or flatten depending on what key you are in.
There's a nice little trick there, theoretical trick, which I'll throw into the mix for about keys, because often people get a little bit worried about keys and key signatures, don't they? There's a rhyme which I use, which is Father Charles goes down and ends battle. And that's the order of the sharps.
Yeah.
Okay. So if something has got 1 sharp in it, it will be the F sharp. And then you add each time, you have the F and then it'll be the C and so on.
Yeah.
And that note will always be the 7th note in the major scale.
Yes.
So that's easy to remember, isn't it? So if somebody said to you, it's in the key of G, you can go, okay, G, what's the note? Here's G on the keyboard. The note before that is an F sharp. And then you realize, okay, so that's part Father Charles, and that's it. So it's easy to work that out.
I always, when I teach scales, or when I was taught scales, there was no logic to it. I had a book of scales, and you just learned these most horrendous, boring exercises. And after a while, you could do it, and you didn't really. You knew that it was for your fingers to train them, but you didn't really understand the theory behind it. So I feel sorry now for anyone learning scales, and I do spend a lot of time trying to explain that there is a reason, there's a method to the madness, and it all links together. So just going on from what you were saying, we learn C is the first scale.
Yeah.
Next scale is a 5th above that. So C, D, E, F, G. That has what we'd say the same key signature as the scale. Sorry, that takes the sharps or flats of the scale before, which in this case was nothing because C.
Yeah.
And then adds 1 more. So we get F sharp.
Yeah.
F sharp in the key of G.
Yeah.
So if I play G and go up another 5th, 5 notes, G, A, B, C, D. That's our next scale to learn. That takes the sharps before, which was F sharp, and it adds 1 more, the Father Charles. And you go up in cycles of 5ths and learn them in 5ths, and you learn that poem, it becomes very easy to slot them in together and to start memorizing what sharps go with what. Yeah.
Now that is a lot easier. I know that sounds quite difficult when you're explaining it over the thing, but basically, instead of just learning things parrot fashion, which is what you were saying when you learned scale, that's what you did, and to some extent that's what happened to me. But of course, if you just think, well, the structure of a major scale is always the same, root, tone, tone, semitone, blah 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 sort of thing. But then wherever it starts from would mean that certain sharps would appear, and the simplest root in as you say, you could learn them. You start with the C, and then you literally work it out on your fingers, can't you? C, D, E, F, G,
Yeah.
and then you start from G. Next scale to learn G, A, G, A, B, C, D, and so on. So cycle of fifths would help you do that. Okay, but if people are listening to this and think still don't understand that, you can always send us a message.
Yeah, it's just to get across the point that there is a method to this. If you can understand some of the methods and start joining the dots as time goes on, it drops a lot quicker than as when I was learning scales, and you kind of learnt them all and you thought, well, I can play them all, but I've got no idea how they fit together. And then somebody later said, oh, well, did you know that minor scale is actually the sibling of that major scale? And
exactly. So we'll talk about that. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, because bizarrely, there's loads of traffic moving around now on the road outside. I'm going to move to the office, which will take me, so everybody can see a guided tour of me walking out of this room into the next one. We like to excite the people on YouTube by doing this. Okay. I'm just going to get a chair. So anyway, as we were saying, don't think we've lost the signal at all. No. I'm going to have to turn a light on here. It's a live show, folks, and I'm not going to edit it out. Right, good. So, you were saying about relative scales, Chris.
Yeah. So let's say you're on Bluescamp and you've had some one-to-one time, and you've learnt a few chords, and you're thinking, okay, so I'm now understanding a little bit about scales as well. And then another bright spark in your group says, well, we're going to learn this song, but it's in a minor key. So first of all, the difference between major and minor is the sound. So major is very happy sounding, minor very, very sad sounding. So you think, okay, so how does that work? How do I actually make a minor, sad-sounding sort of piece of music? And you just have to change one note. So if I go back to our good old chord of C, E, and G. If I take that middle note, which is E, and I lower it, what we call a semitone, so it's the very, very next note down, regardless of whether on the piano, whether it's a black or white note, I get to E flat. Now if I play all the notes together, I get a sad sounding chord. So I've only changed one note. Now with scales, if you then said to somebody, right, so you've got a whole new bunch of scales now to learn, but they're all in minors, their face would drop, there would be tears, because they've just spent the last however months trying to learn all the major scales. They've got Father Charles Goes Down and Ends Battle in their head, it's all working well, and now you've got to start again. But if you've learnt the scales in that format, there's an easy way to do it. So there are all the minor scales share the same key signature as a major scale. There's like related brothers and sisters. So the scale of C, major, all the white notes, no sharps and flats whatsoever. If I descend 3 semitones, so if you think of like chess, 3 or drafts 3 moves down, regardless of whether it's a black or a white note, I go down to B, B flat, down to A. So the relative minor scale of C major is A minor. And if you looked at a piece of music next to the treble and the bass clef, there will be no sharps and flats in the key of A minor because they are the same. But, there is a but it's an easy but. The 7th note is sharpened. But so the 7th note, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 7th note is G. If I make that sharp, so it's a G sharp, link all the notes together. I've now got an A minor scale. So, but the way it's written is on a piece of music, there will be no sharps and flats at the beginning, next to the treble clef and the bass clef. But if you see a sharp sign next to all the Gs, then you can think, hang on a minute. Originally, I thought that piece of music was in C major, but it's not. I'm looking through it, and there's all these G sharps. So actually, perhaps it's A minor. So if I quickly give another example at a sort of a speedier fashion, it might make sense a bit more. So we go back to our G scale, G major. Before we said that G major has an F sharp in it. I want to find out what the relative minor is. That relative minor will have the same key signature. So I put my finger on G. Descend 3 semitones, 3 moves down. I go down to F sharp, to F, to E. Now, E minor is the sibling of G major. E minor has F sharp in it. Plus, the 7th note is sharpened, which is D, D sharp. So we know that E minor in the key signature has F sharp in it, but it also has what we would call an accidental, an extra note of D sharp. So what can be annoying sometimes if you're reading a piece of music for the first time is you can look at the key signature, what sharps and flats are next to a bass or treble clef, and think, I know that is in the key of whatever major. And then if you're not careful, if you don't look through the music, it will take you, a few minutes and you'll suddenly realise, well, that's not quite right, that doesn't work. Well, it's probably because it's in the relative minor and you've missed out those sharpened 7ths along the way.
Yeah,
so
cool.
Everything is linked. If you learn the scales at a reasonable speed without rushing and understand that there is a method to it, learning the minor scales suddenly becomes really easy because you just get that link of descending 3 semitones and you go, oh yeah, I know what the key signature is. Oh, and the 7th note is sharpened. Yeah, that's it. That's all you need to know. And of course, you can do it back to front as well. If you're going from minor to major, you go up 3 semitones.
Let's go back to the thing that you said now about the chords at the beginning, because now we've got the chords down. So even I could play those chords, and I've got an idea now of relative majors and minors, which is really cool. You played C, G, A minor, and F, or CF, A minor and G, whatever way. So you've got effectively the first chord, the 4th chord, and the 5th chord, which we know is important if you're playing in a band, because it's going to be loads of songs, and then the 6th chord. So tell me a little bit about those, because lots of songs have used that chord structure out there. So if you're playing in a band, you're going to be coming across this bunch of chords a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's great if when you start to listen to music differently when you play in a band, when you're sitting in the car and listening to the radio. And my girlfriend will admit that straight away. Since we've met, her perception of listening to music has completely changed. And I can't honestly say if it's for the better or for the worse, because she starts talking about, well, I can hear the different chords in that, and I notice the effects that we use, and that reverb's going on for a long time, and all these other things that, and she sort of picked up from hanging around with me and the likes of yourself, Vic, and all the music that we've done over the years. But going back to the chords, there are so many chords or so many songs that use the same chord structure that you can literally, after training your ears, pick them out without touching or going near an instrument when you listen to a song on the radio, because you're just trained to recognize that shape. And it's just a shape, it's a pattern. Music and pop music is all about patterns. So the chord sequence we're talking about is C, G, A minor, F, and there's a hilarious group called the Axis of Awesome. I don't want to steal their thunder. And they did a whole montage of all the songs that are written in that way. So it's when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comforts me. Okay, that's one song. Elton John, and I'm gonna embarrass myself with my terrible singing so early in the morning.
You don't have to think, Chris, if you don't want to.
You just have to.
Yeah, that's right.
Elton John, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Same sequence, and so on and so on.
Yeah, So Lonely is another one.
Yeah, So Lonely. Staying in the Police. Yeah. So it's thousands and thousands. Lady Gaga, and they literally joined all these songs together. If you YouTube them, Axis of Awesome, they've got loads of clips of it, and there you go, and that's it. Yeah.
So now a technical thing then. So you've got your chords. How do you get around this thing with having two hands working on the keyboard?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd say, especially at Bluescamp, you don't have to if you don't want to. It is not obligatory to play with two hands. If I change the sound, so let me find. There's never the right sound when you want it. I'm just looking for an organ sound, which I've now found. No, I haven't. Okay. Okay, so it's a very old sort of vintage organy sound. I hope that sort of sounded okay coming out over.
Yeah, so do I.
If you were to add the left hand to that, it would probably really be heavy and it'd be overkill.
Yeah.
And again, if you're playing in a group, you need to have all your wits about you, and you should be looking, and you're there to entertain your audience, not to necessarily be buried with your binoculars trying to find notes or on the keyboard. So do not stress about having to play with two hands. However, if you want to, or it's necessary, you've got a little introduction, you can just stick to the root notes.
Yeah.
So I can play C as if you're the bass guitar, C, G, A, F, and I could break the chords up on the right hand. So rather than playing block chords all together, I could do it as a little arpeggio, one note at a time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, you suddenly say, "Oh, that sounds quite nice." And
yeah, that's a nice idea. Yeah, that's good.
Little motif. If you're playing something a little bit more rhythmic, or your right hand can become the rhythmic element, and your left hand can just stay on the beat. So again, if you're doing reggae, so the left hand will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and so on. Your right hand is going to play on an off beat. So I'm just going to keep the chords as they were. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you change. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's nice and easy. It's not too difficult to play. A little bit of coordination. And then you can move on from there. If you nail that quite quickly, nice and easily, you've got your drummer next door to you playing away, you're all in time, your bass player's happy. You can start to play a few extra notes with the left hand, and you only need one finger. You're not getting overly complicated, to just add in a little bit of rhythm. So for example, between G and A, I've got G sharp or A flat. And I could move to the A via that note to make it a little bit more interesting. And the same with the other notes, just add a little bit of rhythm. So I do the same thing, it's just got one finger with the left hand. And then you start to add your own, your own sense of rhythm.
Yeah. So in other words, actually, you're adding notes that aren't in the scale chromatically.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you wanted a technical term for that, they're called passing notes, because you are literally passing through them. You're not hanging around. If you hang around on them, it's going to sound wrong. But if you just pass through them, then it's going to sound all right.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest something else now. One of the things that often we've experienced is that people who turn up at Bluescamp who play, sometimes it's keyboard players. I remember there's one particular one that sticks out in my mind. And this lady had, I think she had a degree, if I remember right. Do you remember that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And she couldn't improvise, which I find fascinating. So she was playing a song with a band, and I had to show her how to improvise. Now, remember, I don't play keyboards. And it was this whole idea that, look, all you need to do, you're in C or in A minor, just go for the white notes. And it will sound, fun and make it sound like you're saying something. So, and that was like a bit of a revelation. So have you got any words of advice for making up a very simple melody that could be done as a solo?
Yeah. We find this a lot, especially on Bluescamp. We tend to attract, I'd like to say, a bunch of very intelligent people who think that playing their instrument is a little bit like driving a computer. If you press the right button, it's going to sound awesome. And if I just knew what buttons I had to press, if you could just tell me the buttons, I'm going to be a genius. And when it comes to improvisation, it doesn't work like that. And I find at the moment, a lot of people forget to use these, and they're not actually listening to what they play. They're too busy looking with their eyes and trying to do the academic approach. Where if you just sat back and listened or closed your eyes and played, you might play a lot less than what you would do if you were trying to hammer away on every keyboard, on every key. But it would sound so much nicer and so much more musical. And this is where the artistic side of music really comes in. Is you've got to listen to what you're doing and listen to the other people and see where you're going to play. And are you playing something quite rhythmic, in which case on a keyboard you're impersonating a drummer, because a drummer is a percussion instrument. If you listen to Superstitious, Stevie Wonder, but it's percussion. It's all percussion. It's a very rhythmic percussion sort of instrument. If you listen to a bit of Jean-Michel Jarre and you're listening to those very lead ethereal synth sounds, it's not percussion. It's a nice gentle motif that's playing a repetitive melody over the top of the chord sequence. And in fact, I would say repetitiveness of an improvisation in pop music is really important, because you're trying to get people to remember what you're playing. And if you play something that's just a bit sort of random and all over the place, it will just sound like it's random and all over the place. It won't sound very musical. So yeah, I'll try and give an example. So if I kick to that chord sequence, so like that, and I'll try and put a solo over the top in a way that you can hear it above the chords. So I'm going to keep playing the chords, but I'll try and make the solo really, 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 really simple. Okay. so on. Okay,
Yeah.
so the tune there is just.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't need to look at the keyboard. The notes are all next to each other. But
Yeah.
what I do is and try and really busy it up.
Yeah.
Soloing or improvising can be as easy or as difficult as you want it to be. But I think the most successful solos are the people that actually listen to what they're playing.
Yeah.
Because they're putting themselves in the same seat as the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Because I think what you were saying about, people think that it's either the technology or whatever, it's also the theory. Because people sort of think, if only I knew another scale.
Yeah.
But it's not like that at all. It's got nothing to do with that. And it's actually, as you say, about listening to what's going on, and sort of, imagining that you're going to say something or sing something. You come up with a much better idea. And I liked what you said about sort of mimicking other instruments. And of course, the keyboard is a percussion instrument, isn't it? Because you actually hitting the keys.
Yeah,
it's not like you're bowing. You're not bowing the thing, or you're not singing it.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's a string instrument, but it's not. That the hammers hit the strings.
It's hammers,
and
yeah,
they bounce
exactly.
off, so it's known as a percussion instrument. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a percussion instrument. So, and I think that is a nice. And we often, obviously, with Bluescamp, we often try to come out of things left field. This is why it's so difficult to explain in the advertising literature how good we are. I mean, from the point of view of. Could you just pause just a moment? Just pause the recording.
Okay, all good.
Cool. Right. Sorry about that. So, yeah, we're saying about the fact that we sort of come out left field. So one of the things that I think is important for people to remember that obviously music was going on before people had scales and before people even had chords, but they were making music and they were improvising. And of course, it's all about whether it's the sort of communication thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
With music. So when you're improvising, you're communicating. And I was involved with some Indian musicians when I was in my teens. And of course, Indian music's all about talking to one another. The tabla player is talking to the sitar player, who's talking to the accordion player, right? The harmonium player, and so on. And we sort of lost that in Western music. That we think, because everything's so scripted, we've got that sort of in our heads right at the beginning. So, as you're saying, if people are listening, and you're what you pointed out, and this is what I wanted to pick up on. If you think the thing about this song is it's percussive, right? And you were saying about superstition, that it's got that sort of funky sort of percussive groove to it. Then that might be the way in. That might be the way in to play the solo. But likewise, vocal. And you mentioned Jean-Michel Jarre, but it could be that the sound is, you're going to do something that's got more of a cello type feel to it, or whatever. And it's that sort of type of thing about mimicking or putting yourself into that. And think, once you've just got in it again, if you're playing in the key of C, it's easy, isn't it? Or if you're playing in the key that you sort of go, yeah, okay, every time I'm going to hit that note, I'm going to hit this one instead. You can get around. You can get around quite easily. Okay, here's a question for you. What happens if you hit a wrong note?
Oh, right. Well, the the first thing I say is there will be lots of wrong notes all the time, and we all play wrong notes. But you can get away with it. The first thing to not do is to silently mouth to yourself the fact that you have just hit a wrong note, or if someone else in your group has hit a wrong note, to turn and face them and mouth some sort of instruction of you've just played that wrong.
Yeah, unless it's the bass player.
Yeah, it's the bass player. But most of the time, no one will know.
That's a joke, but anyway.
Yeah. No one will actually know that you've played a wrong note. So you just need to carry on and make sure that you don't play another one as best you can. It's not necessarily a real problem. It might be a problem if you keep doing it again and again, but then there will be plenty of people there to
well, they just think it's jazz
to help you. Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind people like Les Dawson made a career of playing the wrong note, so you can turn it to your advantage if you really work hard.
Yeah, so in actual fact, of course, the right note is either side of the wrong note anyway. So in most cases,
it's just not a problem.
Because that is one of the things, isn't it, that people really panic about, that they might get it wrong.
Well, yeah, and I see people all the time, especially people I teach. If they're playing a really big sonata, or and they get to the sort of one, the fifth page, battle their way through. They make play one wrong note, and stop! I've got to go back and start again. You're like, no, it's not a problem. We don't have to hear it again for another sort of 5 or 6 minutes. And then see if something else.
That is a very good point, isn't it? Let's hone in on that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found, because I used to do a lot of classical guitar teaching, I don't tend to do very much of that anymore. But the thing with classical guitar is that you would find that people come along and they play their piece, it start off and it sounds great. And then you get to the middle of the page and it starts to disintegrate. And then you get to the bottom of the page and it's all gone, And of course, the reason for it is when they're practicing, bless you, they're practicing, is they get so far and they go wrong and they do what you just said. They go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And they start again. So the beginning has had loads of practice. It's really good. But of course, every time they stop at the point where they go wrong and they go back, it's actually encoded the error.
That's it. It's exactly that.
So
4 months later, they've never played the ending.
No,
because they've never got that far.
Are really good at that point, which is amazing. So, so the thing is, then, as you're saying, probably when people are practicing something that's written, if they're reading music, is to work in sections. And if there's an error, you work to correct the error, but not by going back to the beginning, starting all over again. So that's,
in fact, you don't even have to start at the beginning. If you're sitting down to practice, and I'll say I've got some students, and they're mainly adults actually, who are very fixated with wanting to make progress, and they'll sit down for hours, and it's not necessary, because exactly what you said about encoding mistakes. You need that time in between practice for your brain to learn about what you've just done. So sometimes, a lot of hard work is necessary, but a lot of the time you need 10 or 15 minutes of repeated, good, solid work. Go away, do something else, come back, do it again. And if every time you do that, you are playing it slowly and correctly, you will learn that muscle memory. You will get the rhythm in your head. You will start to feel what you're doing, and it will come. But if you sit down there at the piano for 2 hours in a puddle of sweat, stressing and shouting and swearing, and some of the adults I teach having to go at their children because they're making a noise in the background and distracting them, which
I've got to tell you a story. I've got to tell you a story because this is great. When I first sort of left home. I rented a room in a friend's house, and this guy played piano, and he was good. You know, he was doing his grade 8, and he was doing some Beethoven piece. And I'd be upstairs practicing the guitar, and he'd be downstairs playing on this grand piano. And it would go, he'd play this, there was a particular passage he was having a real problem with. And he'd go, and he'd do it again. And he'd make the mistake in exactly the same place. And then, you know, by the time he'd made the mistake 4 times, he'd start swearing. And then the swearing would, and then he'd start throwing things around the room and slamming doors, going out, and it was still the same mistake. And what was brilliant was that I was sort of like the fly on the wall to this. And I realized that the mistake was getting better and better and better, you know, more and more entrenched in his playing as it was going, because he was getting worked up about it and all the rest. And I thought, oh my God, I do that. But I had to hear somebody else do it to realize what was going on. You've got, as you say, you've got to, you know, you do things slowly, correctly.
Yeah. Little
section, go away, come back, do it again, come back, and you use the word muscle memory.
Yeah. Because
it is about that, the mechanics of that. It's getting that right, isn't it? So, you know, and often we don't realise we're doing it, do we? We make mistakes. And stuff.
No, and I want to, if I can, Vic, just pick up on sort of what you've just said in terms of what makes, if I was to pose a question, what makes a really good player, and I kind of want to answer it myself with a bit of an analogy of driving. So when you drive your car, you do not think about changing the gear or indicating or turning the steering wheel, because if you did have to think about turning the steering wheel, you'd be in the back of the car in front of you or in a ditch or all over the place instantly. Everything is automatic, and you can quite happily drive around safely having a conversation with yourself in your head as we all do driving around. Now, good players are able to do that as well whilst they're playing their instrument, because there is a certain amount of automation that goes on with their playing that allows them to use their ears, to look around, to see what else is going on about them, to interact with the audience and not be rigid and driving their musical instrument like a computer. So when you come to practice, the reason you are practicing is to try and get that level of automation going so that you can then worry about other things, not other things going on in life, but other things to do with your musical performance. So to me, that is good playing.
It used to be, you know, who was sitting in the audience, or what girl was worth looking at.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. but if you're a good player, that gives you the freedom. I mean, I can imagine if there's some young buck listening to this, you know, 18, 19-year-old star guitarist in the making, if you can automate the way you're playing to a certain degree, then you've got the freedom to actually go and, you know, make eye contact and speak to the audience and move around.
No,
and look,
why would you play? Why are you playing in a band? For goodness' sake! I mean, let's get this straight. Because obviously for us, because we played in bands together for years, it was all about clocking who was in the audience, wasn't it? You know, and we communicate between the two of us about this while we're playing. So, you know, because come on, that's rock and roll. We don't normally. That's not normally covered in the course syllabus, but it is about communicating with one another. Because the other point is, if you don't look as if you're having fun when you're playing, the people watching you aren't going to have fun. Actually, if it looks like you're bored, or you're staring at your keyboard, or staring at your guitar, or even worse, actually staring at the floor, because I've often thought that's a bit weird. I've seen that with a lot of people. They just are staring at the floor in front of them. It's like, what's there?
Yeah.
What's on the floor? Might be a set list, but anyway,
And all these things linked. So when I said before about, just play with one hand on the keyboard, just be a 1980s keyboard player. Yeah. Well, if that's the case, you can do that. There'll be certain passages you might have to look at what you're doing, but a lot of the time you can look elsewhere and you can engage and a gig. And I'm having this discussion with people out in France at the moment. A gig is a visual thing. If you are not visual for your audience, then don't do a gig and just send someone an MP3 and they can listen to it on their phone, because what's the point? You need to be up and moving around and entertaining people, and not in your own little bubble in your cocoon. But there are restrictions. If I can't pick that keyboard up and run around the stage because it's too heavy and I'll fall over. But there are ways that you can interact with your band, and I would say it's definitely worth having rehearsals in terms of just that. How are we visually going to look? What can we do? I mean, when we've played, I mentioned the Chillbillies. When we played with the Chillbillies, which is a three-piece brass section, otherwise known as the Raging Horns, which I think is an awesome name. Their best times when they're all moving in sync together, and all that, and then little dance routines, and it's all good and fun. It's fantastic. It's nothing better than seeing a cheeky brass section, doing little dance routines, and it's very, very entertaining. And that's why you go, or to see the drummer linking in with the bass player. Maybe the drummer's doing a solo and the bass player sort of leaning in and doing things. And especially, I think vocalists have probably got the hardest job because they are leading the band. But seeing a vocalist move around, eye contact with people at the front of the audience, eye contact with the people at the back. But I was lucky to see Paul McCartney at Nebworth back in 91 or 92, seems like a million years ago. And at the end of Hey Jude, he just split the audience down the middle and front and back, and everyone was singing the sort of the anthem at the end of Hey Jude. He said, right, just people at the back, people at the front on the left, just all the girls, just all the boys, everybody together. And this went on for about 5 minutes. That is getting your audience to work for you. You don't need to know you don't need to know your Mixolydian scale or your modes to be able to do that.
No,
you just need a mic and to have a bit of sense of presence and a sense of entertainment value to do that. And I think that's why people like Robbie Williams in his heyday was very well respected as a performer, because he got a big crowd up and going.
No, it's absolutely. I mean, actually, I remember seeing a documentary about guitar players once, about sort of guitar legends, and somebody said they are the shaman. They're like the witch doctor, the sort of icon, the hero. We use the word hero, but without really knowing what that is. It's the thing that everybody focuses on. And on stage, that is exactly what you do. People, a good performer, the audience are in empathy with that. It's a state changer. So when you get somebody like Robbie Williams, he is literally doing that stuff. People, he's got everybody's emotional power. That everybody's focused on him.
Yeah, and an audience is on your side. They're not there. Yeah. It's not a test. You're not going in for your grade 6 playing in front of an audience exam.
No. And again, if you look at the great performers, we always focus on because we're intellectual, right? But this is nonsense. This is the thing about music. Music is subliminal. It really works with the basic instincts of the human being, you know, all your senses, right? But we tend to intellectualize about stuff. So when you sort of go, oh yeah, Freddie Mercury, he was a great singer. He had this incredible range. But no, he was just an awesome performer. Yeah, he had a great voice, but there are lots of people with great voices. But Freddie Mercury actually made an audience. They believed in him. You know, you just wanted to be Freddie Mercury on the stage. When you watch Freddie Mercury, you wanted to be him there on the stage, right? Strutting around, right? You believed in him. And that's what great performers do. And that's why, you know, if you look at punk bands, you know, Sex Pistols and all the rest of it, same thing. They certainly didn't know what a mixolydian was, right?
I can't even say that this early in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that was brilliant, Chris. I think that's given a lot of people, you know, think of just get out and play, you know. And you don't need to know all the ins and outs of all the theory and all the rest of it. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff, but there's always a little musical hack you could use, which is, you know, we spoke about a little bit earlier on, where, you know, scales and stuff like that, they're actually quite easy, really, as long as you don't try to theorize about them. Cool, great stuff. So that was good. So we'll probably be talking again at some point on a podcast, because this is your second time on.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping it's not too long, and I'll be back in. Well, I'll see you in Tunbridge anyway, and hopefully to anyone else who's watching this and knows us, I'll see you in Tunbridge in July.
Yeah, but for anybody who's really interested in coming out to you in France, you've got a brilliant place out there.
Yeah, without laying it on too thick, it will be 32 degrees today in the village. There's a flower festival as well, so we're going to have about 2,000 or 3,000 people descend on the village for sort of some flower festival. But yeah, I've got a really nice studio with a good sized control room, really nice valve desk that's just been retuned, nice live room, all the gear and a gîte as well. So it's a proper residential studio, which are few and far between now, complete with swimming pool and about 2 acres of ground. So sitting in the middle of the national park and forest. So I must admit, you couldn't really ask for much more. It's been a long time.
No, exactly. It's a magnificent place you got there, Chris. Yeah, really good. All right. So, cool. So, until next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers.